At my mom's funeral, he stole her jewelry, slept with her nurse, used her ashes in a TikTok, then left me with the funeral bill. So I found their crew's vlog and commented, "She's wearing a dead woman's necklace. You paid for it with her ashes." I was standing outside the funeral home in Tacoma, Washington, still in the same black dress I'd worn to bury my mother that morning, when my phone buzzed with a notification I will never forget. It was a TikTok link from my cousin Jenna, followed by, "This can't be real, right?" I opened it. There they were, my husband, Mark, and my mother's hospice nurse, Lacey, standing on the deck of a cruise ship somewhere off the coast, fake laughing into the camera while holding a little decorative urn between them. My mother's urn, the same one that was supposed to be sitting next to me in the passenger seat of my car. They were doing a romantic ashes release, except the ocean behind them wasn't Washington. It was bright, warm, sunny. A tropical cruise, captions popping up like fireworks, turning loss into love. A new chapter begins when you let the past drift away. Then Lacey held up a gold pendant, my mom's favorite one, her wedding gift from my dad, and said, "Even in death, she brought us together." I swear I felt something inside me rip in half. The funeral director had told me the night before that everything was set, that mom's belongings were placed carefully with her, that the casket was sealed. But the necklace was missing this morning. I thought maybe I'd misremembered. Maybe they removed it for preservation. I was too tired, too broken, too overwhelmed to fight. But the video made it plain. Mark had gone into the funeral home last night. He had taken the jewelry, my mother's jewelry, from her coffin. And now here he was, using her ashes, her necklace, her memory for content. I felt dizzy. I went back inside and demanded answers. The funeral director looked at me with this careful, measured face and said, "Your husband came by after hours. He insisted he had your permission." My vision blurred. He'd signed for her jewelry, sold it, and taken the nurse, the one woman who'd been in our home as mom was dying, on a cruise using the money. $6,000. That's all it took for him to sell out my mother's dignity, my grief, and our entire marriage. I called him. The moment he picked up, I was hit with loud music and laughter. He sounded annoyed from the start. "Really, you're doing this now?" he snapped. "You're so dramatic. God, your grief is exhausting. You need to stop using death as an excuse to control me." He said it like I was a burden, like I had inconvenienced him by burying my mother. When I told him I knew about the jewelry, he scoffed. "Yeah, I pawned it. We needed money. You don't do anything but cry lately." Then he laughed, actually laughed, and said the cruise was therapy for him and Lacey. My stomach dropped. By the time I got home, there was a notice taped to my apartment door. An eviction, his signature, his handwriting. He'd removed me from the lease and told the landlord I'd moved out. He left me with the funeral bill. More than $8,000. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something in me went cold and sharp. I pulled up their TikTok again, their stupid, bubbly vlog feed. I watched the timestamps. I saw the cruise itinerary. I noticed things they didn't think anyone would catch. And one night, 2 days into their trip, I waited until they posted their new video. Another staged, healing moment. Music, sunset, the urn again. And that night I posted something that, before everything went to hell, my life in Tacoma felt stable. Not perfect, not magical, not Instagram-worthy, just stable. Mark and I had been together 7 years, married for 4. We had our routines, Friday grocery runs, cheap takeout on Wednesdays, little arguments about dishes that we always smoothed over. It wasn't passionate, but it didn't feel dangerous. I thought predictability meant safety. Then my mom got sick. Pancreatic cancer doesn't care about anything. It just shows up and starts chewing through the life you thought you had. Overnight, I became her caretaker, appointments, medication schedules, cleaning, helping her shower, holding her hair while she threw up, pretending I wasn't terrified every second she looked just a little weaker than the day before. I won't lie, it broke me in slow motion. I stopped sleeping, I lost weight. My world shrank down to the space between the hospice bed and the kitchen sink. And Mark, at first he acted supportive. He brought her flowers twice a week. He made us dinner when I forgot to eat. He told me I was strong. He even insisted we bring hospice care into our home so Mom wouldn't have to die in some cold hospital room. I thought it was kindness. Then Lacey arrived. Lacey was one of those bright, bubbly, soft-spoken hospice nurses who made everything seem manageable. She was good at her job. She knew how to talk to Mom in a way that didn't make her feel like she was fading. She complimented my cooking even when it was terrible. She called me sweetheart like we were friends. But the thing I remember most now is how Mark looked at her the first day she walked into the house. It was quick, just a flicker, but I saw it. I just didn't want to admit it. Because Mom was dying, and everything else was background noise. As weeks passed, I noticed things. Inside jokes between them, brushing past each other in the hallway, the way their conversations got quieter whenever I walked into the room. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself grief was distorting everything. I told myself no man would stoop so low as to cheat with the nurse caring for his dying mother-in-law. And I reminded myself that he'd held my mom's hand during her worst nights. I clung to that. The truth hit in pieces. One night I found a wine glass in the guest bedroom after Lacey's shift. Another time I walked in from the store and they were sitting too close on the couch, whispering. When they noticed me, they sprang apart so fast it was cartoonish. But Mom was still alive then. And I hated myself for even considering causing more chaos in her house. So I swallowed it all. Every suspicion, every ache, every warning. When Mom died, Mark didn't comfort me. He didn't even sit next to me at the service planning meeting. He kept looking down at his phone, texting someone I later realized was Lacey. I should have known then. I should have confronted him. But I was too numb to fight. I thought the worst moment of my life was losing my mother. I didn't know the real nightmare was what came after. When Mark stopped pretending to care. When Lacey started treating me like I was in the way. When the two of them traded compassion for something cruel and mocking and shameless. I didn't know that the betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial, physical, humiliating, and planned. And I definitely didn't know just how far they were willing to go to make my grief feel like an inconvenience. The week after Mom died felt like walking barefoot over broken glass, while everyone watched and pretended not to see the blood. Every time I tried to stand up, something else cut deeper. The first crack came when I found out Mark had taken personal leave from work, something he never mentioned to me. I only learned about it because his boss emailed me asking if he was doing okay. I didn't even know he'd stopped going in, but apparently he'd told them he needed space because the house was unbearable with all the crying. My crying. While I was handling the funeral arrangements alone. While I was sleeping on the couch because I couldn't bear to walk into Mom's empty room. While I was paying for everything, because, as I later learned, he drained our joint savings account. Then came the jewelry. I'd placed Mom's favorite pieces with her necklace, her wedding ring, her tiny gold keepsake earrings. They weren't worth much, but they were treasured. The morning of the funeral, the director quietly told me the necklace wasn't there. He assumed it was intentional. I told him it wasn't. He apologized but looked nervous. I brushed it off, thinking maybe Mom had asked for it to be removed at some point. I was too fogged over to question it. But 3 hours later, I saw Lacey wearing earrings that looked suspiciously like Mom's. My stomach twisted. I told myself they couldn't be the same. That would be insane. That would be beyond cruel. I didn't know then that insane and cruel were exactly the point. The next escalation happened the day after the funeral, when I came home from dropping off thank you cards at my aunt's house. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Lacey's car parked there. Again. She was inside my home, again even though Mark and I were barely speaking. When I walked in, she was sitting on the couch, scrolling TikTok, wearing one of Mark's hoodies. I froze. She didn't. She just looked up and asked, "Do you have any oat milk? Mark won't shut up about his coffee." Like I was the roommate. Like she lived there. Like she wasn't the nurse who'd watched my mother die and then slept with my husband behind my back. I told her to get out. She gave me this smug, almost pitying look and said, "You're overwhelmed. Let Mark handle things for a while." Mark walked in 5 minutes later, cool as ever, and said I should calm down because I was still in grief brain. He didn't deny anything. He didn't explain anything. He acted like her being there was normal. I went into the bedroom to grab my mom's paperwork, and that's when I noticed the missing documents. Bank statements, insurance forms, the envelope with the death certificates. Gone. Mark had taken them, all of them. Something inside me finally snapped open, the part of me that had been trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. He wasn't confused or overwhelmed. He wasn't coping badly. He was erasing me from my own life. And I realized then, The cruise wasn't some random impulsive choice. This was planned, coordinated, calculated. They wanted my mother's things. They wanted the money. They wanted me out of the picture. They weren't just sleeping together. They were building a life while dismantling mine. And I still hadn't seen the full extent of what they'd done, what they were still doing, because the cruise was where their arrogance finally made them sloppy. And that's where everything started to unravel in my favor. I didn't sleep for 2 days after they left for the cruise. I lived in this weird loop of shaking anger and numb silence. Every time I tried to process what they'd done, something else hit harder. But nothing prepared me for the first real twist. It started when I finally logged into our bank app. I expected the savings account to be low. I expected the checking to be messy. What I didn't expect was the brand new account, one I'd never seen before with both of their names on it. Mark and Lacey, a joint account. Created 3 weeks before my mother died. 3 weeks before. That alone made me nauseous. But then I saw the deposits. Over $9,400. Not from Mark's job, not from anything I recognized. And the memo on the newest transfer 2 days before the funeral made my skin go cold. Sale medical equipment private. My mother's medical equipment, the hospital bed, the portable oxygen, the safety rails, all the devices the hospice program had loaned us. All the equipment that hadn't even been processed for return yet. He didn't just pawn her jewelry. He sold the equipment she died in. I stared at the screen so long the numbers started to blur. My brain kept trying to find an explanation, any explanation. That wasn't what it looked like. But the more I scrolled, the more it became obvious. He'd been draining our money, pawning her things, selling items from the house, and funneling it all into this secret account with her. And then it got worse, because there was another memo in that account, one that should have been impossible. Deposit, estate advance, but my mother didn't have an estate. There was no inheritance coming, no insurance payout. Nothing to advance. Confused and panicking, I started tearing through the drawers where I kept Mom's documents. And that's when I realized something else was missing, her checkbook, which made no sense. She was barely able to write during her last weeks. The checks had been untouched for months. I grabbed my keys, drove straight to her bank, and asked to speak to someone, anyone, about recent activity on her account. They told me they couldn't discuss it without documentation, and I swore I felt my heart pounding in my teeth as I handed over the death certificate. When the teller pulled up the account, she froze. There were transactions, large ones, checks written, funds transferred, payments to a cruise line, payments to a jewelry buyer, a hotel booking, a spa package. And then she said the words that made me feel like I was going to faint. There was also a check signed 2 days before the funeral for $5,700. It looks like your mother's signature, but the handwriting seems inconsistent. Would you like us to flag it for fraud? My mother couldn't even hold a pen 2 days before the funeral. Mark had forged her signature. And when I looked at the security footage log the bank printed for me, I saw the timestamp. I saw the camera ID. I saw his face. He'd gone into my mother's bank the morning after she died, stood there, pretending to manage her affairs, and withdrew nearly everything she had left. Then deposited it into the account he shared with Lacey. The cruise, the jewelry, the fake healing content. It wasn't just selfish or cruel. It was funded by fraud, by exploiting a dying woman who trusted him. And suddenly everything clicked. The documents he'd stolen from the house, the way Lacey spoke to me like she already lived there, the sudden eviction, the missing jewelry, the money trail. They weren't just having an affair. They were building a new life together using the scraps of my mother. My nightmare wasn't accidental. It was orchestrated. And for the first time since Mom died, I felt something stronger than grief. I felt purpose. Because now I knew exactly who I was dealing with, and I knew the only way to destroy them was to hit them where they thought they were safest. The moment I walked out of the bank, something inside me locked into place. Not rage. Not hysteria, not even heartbreak. Focus. Cold, precise, almost clinical focus. Mark and Lacey thought I was too broken to fight back. They thought grief made me soft. They thought I'd just collapse, pay the funeral bill, cry myself empty, and drift away while they sailed off into their new life funded by my mother's corpse. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The first thing I did was gather every scrap of evidence I had. Screenshots of the secret bank account, copies of the forged checks, photos of the missing documents, the TikTok videos. The pawn shop receipts I later forced the shop to reprint by showing them proof the jewelry wasn't his. I even got the funeral home director to write a statement confirming Mark entered after hours and removed items from the casket. Then I organized it all into folders, physical and digital. Labeled, time-stamped, sorted. It was the most in control I'd felt in months. Next, I called my mother's hospice organization. I didn't accuse anyone yet. I just asked if they performed background checks on nurses. The woman on the phone got quiet, too quiet. She said Lacey was no longer with the company as of the day after my mom's death. That meant one thing: someone complained, or something happened. Either way, that was leverage. Then I called a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer, at least, not yet. I called a probate and fraud attorney in Seattle. When I explained what happened, he didn't interrupt. He didn't gasp. He didn't even sound surprised. He just said, "I've seen similar cases. You need to move quickly." He told me everything I needed to do: file fraud alerts, freeze my mother's account, dispute transactions, report the forged check, record every communication with Mark. Then he said something that stuck with me: "Do not warn them, do not confront them, let them keep incriminating themselves." And that was perfect, because they had no idea I knew. The cruise was still going. Their TikToks were still posting twice a day. Their comments were sugary and nauseating. Sometimes love blooms in unexpected places, smiling sparkles, healing together after a hard loss. She's my anchor in the storm. Meanwhile, my lawyer filed an emergency petition to freeze the joint account they created. And we timed it perfectly. Because on the cruise itinerary they posted, I knew their next port stop had a luxury excursion that cost nearly $1,000, something they were planning to buy the next morning. They were about to discover the account was frozen, but I wanted more than inconvenience. I wanted consequences. So I spent the night digging through every video, every caption, every slip-up in their posts. And that's when I noticed something interesting. In one clip, Lacey showed her cruise ID badge. She flashed it too fast for normal viewers, but when I zoomed in and slowed it down, the name of the ship, the deck number, and even part of their room number was visible. They exposed their exact location at sea. And the best part, the cruise line had already posted on their website that the ship had a 24/7 hotline for security concerns or legal inquiries. I stared at the number, then at the folder of evidence in front of me. Then at the video of them giggling with my mother's urn like it was a beach accessory. And I realized exactly how I could turn all of this into something far bigger than embarrassment or financial trouble. Something public, something legal, something they couldn't delete, lie about, or charm their way out of. So that night, with their newest vlog freshly uploaded, a stupid slow-motion kiss with the urn between them, I opened TikTok, drafted my post, attached the evidence I knew would hit hardest. And at the very end, I added one detail they never expected me to know. I thought posting the evidence would be the big blow. I thought exposing their location, their forged check, their fake grief journey, and the stolen jewelry would be enough to shake their little cruise cabin world apart. But the real twist, the one that changed everything, happened because of something I didn't expect. My post went viral. Not just a few angry commenters viral. I mean national trending tag viral. It started slow. 50 comments in the first hour, mostly people telling me they were sorry, or calling Mark and Lacey trash. Then a hospice nurse commented saying the video of Lacey using a patient's ashes on social media violated multiple professional codes. Then a woman claiming to be Lacey's ex-roommate said she wasn't surprised because Lacey always gravitated toward married men. By midnight, my post had hit 30,000 shares. People were stitching it. Lawyers were duetting it. Nurses were tagging the state licensing board. Cruise line employees chimed in saying they recognized the deck layout. Then someone commented, "OMG, look at the background in their Day 2 video. That's the same necklace from the pawn shop on 6th Ave. They posted it earlier today." My hands went cold. Earlier that afternoon, I'd forced the pawn shop manager to show me the footage of Mark selling the jewelry. The earrings, the necklace, the ring, they were all there, But the necklace wasn't pawned. He kept it. And now it was in a TikTok video being worn by Lacey as she danced on the balcony while holding the urn. I clicked the video, paused, zoomed in. My mother's necklace, still with them, meaning Mark lied even about the pawn amount. Meaning he hadn't needed to steal the jewelry for money. He took it because he wanted to give it to her. But that wasn't the twist. The twist came at 3:14 a.m. when I got a DM from a username I didn't recognize. "You don't know me, but I work on the ship. You need to see this." Attached was a short video. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The camera was shaky. It looked like a hallway on the ship. Music thumped in the background. Then the camera flipped to show a man, shirt half-buttoned, drunk, stumbling. Mark. But he wasn't with Lacey. He was with another woman, a passenger wearing a neon wristband from the ship's nightclub. The crew member filming whispered, "Your husband comes down here every night. He's been hooking up with guests behind the nurse's back. Everybody knows." My breath caught. He wasn't just cheating on me. He wasn't just cheating with Lacey. He was cheating on her too. And then the crew member sent the second video. This time, it was Lacey, red-faced, mascara-streaked, screaming at ship security because she'd been locked out of the cabin. The security guard explained calmly that she wasn't allowed back in until she stopped threatening passengers. She kept yelling, "I know he's with someone else," and slamming her hand on the wall. Apparently, the affair that ended my marriage wasn't even exclusive. But the real bomb, the true twist, landed in the last message the crew member sent. "I don't think she knows yet, but he's been telling people on board that she's temporary and that he's meeting up with someone else when they dock in San Diego." Someone else. I just sat there staring at those words. He hadn't destroyed my life to be with Lacey. He'd used Lacey the same way he used my mother, and he was already moving on from her while she was on the same trip he funded with stolen money. That's when I realized something important. Mark wasn't in love. Mark wasn't confused. Mark wasn't running from grief. Mark was a predator, and what he did next proved it more clearly than anything I'd uncovered so far. When people betray you, you tell yourself it's about emotions. Weakness, temptation, loneliness, something human, something you can point at and say, "That's why." But the truth I uncovered about Mark wasn't emotional. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even about Lacey. It was about control. Cold, calculated, methodical control. And the reason came out in the ugliest way possible. It started with a phone call from my lawyer the next morning. He sounded tense, more tense than he'd been the entire time. "Your husband just attempted to access the frozen account," he said. He got aggressive with the bank manager. Security had to escort him out. That alone wasn't surprising. But then he added, "He told the bank the account was solely his, and that you were mentally unstable and should not have access to anything belonging to your mother." Those exact words. Mentally unstable. That wasn't just an insult. That was a tactic. I knew that tactic. Because after the call, I finally logged into an email account we shared, the one he assumed I never checked. He'd been writing to my mother's hospice caseworker for months. Not friendly emails, not updates, not questions. He'd been documenting my erratic behavior. She cries in unpredictable bursts. She forgets instructions. She lashes out emotionally. She's overwhelmed, and I'm worried she might be a danger to her mother. All exaggerated. All taken out of context. All framed like he was the calm, level-headed caregiver doing his best while I spiraled. It clicked so hard I felt the floor tilt. He'd been laying groundwork, preparing a narrative, creating a paper trail, not just to make me look unstable, but to make himself look like the rational, responsible one. And then I saw the email that made my skin crawl. Sent 5 days before Mom died. "Once her mother passes, I'll be handling her affairs. She won't be in the right headspace." He wrote that to the hospice supervisor. 5 days before she died. He assumed he'd have control of everything. He assumed the grief would break me enough that I wouldn't question anything. He assumed no one would believe the grieving daughter over the helpful, concerned husband. And that wasn't all. The next email was to Lacey. Subject: timeline. The message was short, only a few lines. "Once she's taken care of, we move quickly. Bank first, jewelry second. Get her out of the house before she figures anything out." Once she's taken care of, my vision blurred. My heartbeat roared in my ears. I reread it 5 times before I accepted what it meant. He wasn't talking about my mother. He was talking about me. getting me out of the house, cutting me out of the finances, taking control of everything while I was drowning in grief. And the part that made my stomach flip, the timestamp. He sent that email from our living room while I was asleep on the couch beside my mother's hospice bed. I remembered that night. I'd woken up at 2 a.m. to get Mom water. I saw his laptop open. He said he was working. He wasn't working. He was planning. Then came the final email. The worst one, to Lacey. She's not thinking clearly. If we push a little harder, she'll leave on her own. After that, it's just us and the money. Not love, not passion, not grief, money. He was never running toward Lacey. He was running toward what she could help him take. My mother's belongings, my mother's checks, my home, my accounts, my identity. He wanted me broken because broken people don't fight. But he miscalculated one thing. I wasn't broken. I was waking up. And now I knew exactly what kind of monster I was dealing with. He wasn't just a cheater. He wasn't just a thief. He wasn't just a liar. He was someone who exploited the dying, planned to erase the grieving, and believed he was untouchable. But he had no idea what was waiting for him when that cruise ship docked. The morning their cruise docked in San Diego, I was already awake, sitting in my car outside the port security office with a folder full of evidence and a calmness I hadn't felt in months. Not peace, clarity. Ice-cold clarity. Everything was timed. My viral TikTok had already drawn the attention of reporters, hospice watchdog groups, and most importantly, the State Fraud Division. My lawyer had coordinated with Port Authority officials, the cruise security team, and the San Diego PD. The moment the ship's manifest updated to cleared for disembarkation, they were ready. All I had to do was wait, and I didn't wait long. At 9:42 am, passengers started coming down the gangway. Families, couples, sunburned tourists dragging suitcases. Then I saw them. Mark looked hungover, wearing a wrinkled shirt and sunglasses that did nothing to hide the fact he'd barely slept. Lacey looked worse, blotchy face, wild hair, and the necklace still around her throat like a twisted trophy. They didn't see me at first. They were too busy arguing. When their feet hit the pavement, a port officer approached them. "Mark Turner, Lacey Doyle." They froze. The officer continued, "You're being detained as part of an ongoing investigation. Please step aside." People stopped walking. Cameras came out. Someone recognized them from the viral video and shouted, "Oh my God, it's the Earn couple." They turned then. They saw me. And I swear, watching their faces collapse gave me something I didn't know I needed. Confirmation that they finally understood what they'd done. Lacey started crying. Ugly, loud, dramatic sobs. Mark didn't cry. He glared at me like I had inconvenienced him. "Really?" he snapped as officers pulled them toward the security building. "You're blowing this out of proportion. You're sick, you know that. You need help." I stepped forward, held up my phone, and tapped play. His own email, "Once she's taken care of, we move quickly," echoed out loud. The officer stopped walking. Looked at Mark. Looked at me. Mark went pale. And for the first time since my mother died, he had nothing to say. Inside the port building, they were separated and interviewed. The fraud investigators took copies of every document I'd brought. The hospice organization, informed by hundreds of TikTok users, had already submitted a formal complaint about Lacey. The bank had filed a forgery report. The cruise line reported misuse of remains, which apparently is a whole separate charge. The biggest blow, though, the forged checks, the stolen medical equipment, the unauthorized removal of items from the funeral home, the death certificate fraud, all felonies. When they walked Mark out in handcuffs an hour later, he still tried to act smug. "This won't stick," he muttered. "You're emotional, they'll see through you." But then the officer escorting him said quietly, "Sir, your own emails are enough to put you away." That shut him up. Lacey wasn't arrested. Her involvement was still being investigated. But they released her into the sunlight looking like someone who finally realized she was just another one of Mark's victims. She tried to approach me. I didn't let her speak. "You knew my mother was dying," I said. "You used her home, you used her things, you used me. Whatever he promised you, he promised her too." She didn't deny it. She couldn't. She walked away alone. The aftermath wasn't quick. Investigations rarely are, but within weeks, the forged checks were officially linked to Mark. The financial fraud charges were filed. He was removed from the lease permanently. My mother's remaining funds were restored. The pawn shop surrendered the items he sold. The hospice board opened a disciplinary review against Lacey, and me, I moved into a small apartment overlooking Commencement Bay. Quiet, clean. Mine, I scattered my mother's real ashes in the water at sunrise. No cameras, no music, no fake sentiment. Just me, the waves, and her necklace around my hand where it belonged. And when I walked back to my car, I felt something shift inside me. Not victory, not joy, not even relief, just closure. And the faintest hint of a smile when I thought, turns out, grief wasn't my weakness. It was his miscalculation.